So guys, the much anticipated Update 7 for Hell Let Loose just came out, and sure enough, it's the biggest and probably the most important update we've seen so far. It's got a brand new map and a ton of massive gameplay improvements, but the problem is, it might have just broken the game as well. So guys, this is BillyEatWorld again, and let's find out. Alright guys, how you going? Welcome to the video, and like I said, Update 7 for Hell Let Loose is a big one. We've actually been talking about it for the last couple of months because this is the one that not only features the iconic Carentan map, but also the animation upgrades as well. But like I said before, all of the new stuff has been hard to enjoy because unfortunately this patch has just about broken the game for a lot of players. Even on high-end machines, the game is intermittently crashing at the moment, and worst of all, there's some kind of memory leak bug which is sucking the frame rate down to sometimes single digits. Now, Hell Let Loose has been known in the past to have some performance issues like any early access game, but this is clearly something different. Basically what happens is your frame rate gets worse and worse as time goes on, eventually getting to the point where you just have to stop to wait for it to fix itself. And that's really the only kind of thing that makes the game playable at the moment. The fact that it does suddenly get better after a few minutes. You don't need to restart the game or change any settings. It'll just get better on its own. But even so, it is still probably too much for a lot of people to handle. So needless to say, the devs are currently working on a fix for this bug at the moment. So hopefully we'll see that very soon. Now, I felt like I needed to get that out of the way first up because apart from that, you can tell this update is the most important one we've had so far. Basically, the devs have reworked just about all of the first and third person animations in the game using motion capture technology, and obviously that's going to make the game look very different. And look, it's kind of hard to put these changes into words, but basically just take a look on screen now. The character animations are starting to look a lot more like a AAA shooter. And while I'd say it's still not up to the standard of something like, for example, a modern Battlefield game, they are more believable, and they're at least on par now with a lot of other similar indie shooters. Now, speaking of similar shooters, well, another big improvement worth mentioning in this update is that the devs have finally overhauled all of the weapon sounds in the game, which is a point people have always criticized in Hell Let Loose compared to a game like Postscriptum. And well, once again, it looks like Hell Let Loose is catching up. Weapon sounds are now procedural and, according to the devs, contextually correct, meaning they should sound different depending on things like range and environment. And part of this is that the devs have been, quote, marking up exterior areas into audio treatment zones like open fields, urban, and forest, and apparently more of these specific zones will come in future updates. Now, with that out of the way, probably the most exciting part about Update 7 is obviously going to be the iconic new map, Carentan, which I've got to say disappointingly is yet another Normandy biome map, but thankfully it is different enough from the other French maps to make up for it. Kind of like St. Mère-Église, this one focuses on a town in the middle with plenty of opportunities for CQB and sneaky flanking maneuvers. And on the outskirts, it opens up onto more wide open fields, which is obviously a lot more suited for vehicle-on-vehicle combat. Now, Carentan doesn't really have any big feature buildings, like for example the church on St. Mère-Église, but what it does have is a train line with carriages that you can get in and out of. And not just that, but you'll notice the landscape is a lot more interesting than most of the other French maps as well. It's not just a dead flat plain, there's actually some rolling hills that you can go up and hide behind. But probably the most surprising thing is how detailed the urban areas are, which is previously one thing I would have said Postscriptum definitely had in the bag as well. You can tell the level designers are getting better with each map they add to this game, and by far and away, Carentan seems to be the best one they've come up with yet. Now, that's all of the new content out of the way, but obviously with every major update comes some gameplay tweaks as well. And well, this time it looks like the devs have decided to do a balance pass on garrisons. Basically, in a nutshell, they weren't happy with the meta of garrison bombing. So from now on, what you'll notice is that garrisons can't be placed on neutral or enemy territory. Now, obviously, that's a pretty big nerf, so what the devs have decided to do instead is make them more resilient. You actually need to dismantle garrisons now, which takes 5 seconds, which obviously introduces the possibility of spawn camping. So to counteract that, they've also changed it so that you can't spawn on a garrison if there's an enemy within 15 meters. Basically, what all of that means is that garrisons are now more of a defensive spawn, and so you'll really need to rely on outposts when you're on the front line, which obviously is going to make things a lot harder for the attacking team from now on. So to offset that, the outpost cooldown timer has been reduced, and it now takes only 2 minutes to capture a sector. Probably the coolest new garrison feature that's been added in Update 7 though is the new Commander Airhead ability, which is basically like a temporary call in Garrison, which admittedly does only last for 2 minutes, but as a trade-off it can be called in onto enemy territory, which is really going to be useful for deep flanking maneuvers or to quickly reinforce a falling strong point. But anyway, finally, just before we finish up, we probably should talk about some of the smaller changes you might have missed in this one, because, well, there's actually a lot of them. For example, the devs have taken another crack at improving FOI, this time by adding photorealistic lighting, and once again, looking at and improving all of the strong points. Not just that, but Omaha Beach has apparently also had some lighting and asset improvements as well, which is apparently only just a small taste of what they're currently working on. It'll also be getting a full rework in a future update, and not just visually, but also in terms of gameplay balance as well. Speaking of gameplay balance, another thing I should mention is that apparently, according to the devs, every weapon now has a recoil pattern that can be mastered, which seems like it should have been something the devs would have mentioned in a bit more detail. But with that being said, it must have been a pretty subtle change, because I've got to admit I didn't actually notice this until I read it in the patch notes. One thing I did notice though is that finally you can actually reload the M1 Garand mid-clip, which isn't exactly true to life, but it does make the gun a lot more fun and usable in-game. And also, last but not least, for MG players, well, you'll now notice your guns are also now a lot more usable in-game, because you can deploy them while you're still moving. So hopefully that's going to make the class a lot less clunky. But anyway, guys, that just about wraps up this quick update video. So as always, make sure you let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And as always, just remember that I can't possibly cover every single detail in these dev briefings in the one video. So if you do want more details, check out the links to the full post in the description below. As always, though, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and please feel free to check out the links in the description if you want to see any more of these videos. And also, don't forget you can find my Twitter and Discord links down there as well if you want to keep in touch. And as always, until next time, see you later and have a good one.